Part 1. The Birthday Party Bombshell. I never thought my life would unravel at a birthday party. It was a sunny Saturday, and our house was buzzing with laughter, balloons, and the smell of fresh-out-the-oven pizza. My daughter was turning 6, and my wife, Michelle, had gone all out to make it perfect. She'd always been the planner, the one who kept everything running like clockwork. Watching her float through the crowd, chatting effortlessly with our friends and family, I felt proud to call her my wife. That's why I didn't think twice when she handed me her phone to show me a picture of our daughter blowing out her candles. But right then, as I held the phone, a text popped up. "I love you more. Red heart." My stomach sank. "Who's that?" I asked, keeping my voice as casual as I could. Michelle glanced at the screen, her smile faltering for just a moment. "Oh, that's Greg from work," she said, waving it off. "He's going through a tough time. We've been talking a lot lately, work stuff, you know." I nodded, pretending to accept her explanation. The party was in full swing, and I didn't want to ruin the day for our daughter. But my mind was spinning. Something about her tone felt off. I tried to shake it, chalking it up to paranoia. After all, Michelle wasn't just my wife. She was my best friend, my partner of 8 years, and the mother of my 2 kids. We'd been through so much together. Why would I doubt her now? The day ended beautifully, with our daughter passing out on the couch in a sugar-fueled coma. But when the guests left and the house was quiet, Michelle turned to me, her face pale. "We need to talk," she said. The words hit me like a truck. I followed her to the kitchen, where she fidgeted with her wedding ring. "That text, it wasn't from Greg," she admitted, avoiding my eyes. "It's someone else. His name is Eric." My knees almost gave out. "Someone else?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Michelle nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "It started 6 months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen, I swear. But I've developed feelings for him." Her confession shattered me. And yet, that wasn't even the worst part of what she had to say. Part 2. The unthinkable truth. I couldn't process what she'd just said. It felt like I was suddenly watching my life from outside my own body. Michelle was still talking, her voice trembling, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. "I need you to understand," she said, her eyes pleading with me. "I wasn't looking for this. It had happened. It started as a friendship, but then things changed." "Change how?" I managed to ask, though I was terrified of the answer. She hesitated, chewing on her bottom lip. "We've never, done anything physical," she said. "But we've talked a lot. About everything. About things I can't talk to you about." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You can't talk to me?" I snapped. "I'm your husband, Michelle. What could you possibly tell him that you can't tell me?" "It's not like that," she said quickly. "It's just after the kids and with work and everything we've been through, I started feeling lost. Like something was missing. Eric made me feel seen." Seen. That word stung more than I expected. I thought I'd been doing everything right. Working long hours to provide for the family, helping with the kids when I got home, trying to keep our marriage alive in the chaos of everyday life. But now she was telling me it wasn't enough. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice breaking. Her silence was louder than any answer she could have given. She stared at the floor, and I realized I didn't even recognize the woman standing in front of me anymore. "I think we need time apart," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "I need to figure out what I want, and it's not fair to keep pretending everything's okay." I wanted to scream, to beg her to stay and fix this with me. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood there, paralyzed, as she grabbed a blanket and a pillow and headed for the couch. That night, I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of our marriage, wondering how we'd gotten here. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The full truth was yet to come, and it would turn my world upside down in ways I couldn't imagine. Part 3. The Unraveling. A few days after Michelle moved to the guest room, I began to feel like a stranger in my own home. She wasn't cold or cruel. If anything, she was polite. Too polite. We'd become distant cohabitants, existing under the same roof, but in entirely different worlds. Our kids noticed the tension, of course, though I did my best to shield them from it. But I couldn't let go of that nagging feeling that there was more to the story. Her admission about Eric felt incomplete, like an abstract painting where the most important parts were missing. The pieces didn't fit, and I couldn't stop myself from digging for answers. One night, while Michelle was out working late, I decided to check our phone records. It wasn't something I'd ever done before. I'd always trusted her. But my gut was screaming at me, and I needed something, anything, to make sense of what was happening. The records were a revelation. Hundreds of calls and texts between Michelle and a number I didn't recognize. They'd started innocuously enough months ago, an occasional call during work hours, a few texts here and there. But over time, the pattern changed. Late-night calls, dozens of messages exchanged in the early hours of the morning. It was a breadcrumb trail that led directly to Eric. That wasn't all. As I scrolled through her social media accounts, something else caught my eye. A picture posted months ago from our family's beach condo. Michelle was smiling in the photo, standing by the water. But what I hadn't noticed at the time, what now screamed at me, was the faint outline of a man's reflection in her sunglasses. It wasn't me. I felt sick. The next morning, I confronted her. I wasn't calm, and I wasn't careful. "How long have you been sneaking off with him?" I demanded, holding the phone records in my hand. Michelle froze. For a moment, I thought she was going to deny it. But then she sat down at the kitchen table, head in her hands. "It's not what you think," she said weakly. "What I think?" I shot back. "I think you've been lying to me. I think you've been meeting him behind my back. I think you've betrayed everything we built together." Her tears started flowing, but this time they didn't move me. They felt like crocodile tears, a deflection from the truth. "Okay," she said finally, her voice shaking. "We met at the condo, but it wasn't what you think." "Then tell me what it was, Michelle," I said, my voice raw. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks a hell of a lot like an affair." She admitted it, half of it anyway. Yes, they'd met at the condo. Yes, they'd been alone. But she swore it hadn't gone beyond talking and sharing their feelings. I didn't believe her. Not anymore. And as I stood there, my mind reeling, I realized the unraveling of our marriage wasn't just about her lies or her connection with Eric. It was about something much darker, something I hadn't yet uncovered. The full truth was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. Part 4. The Beach Condo Revelation. Michelle's confession haunted me for days. I couldn't shake the image of Eric in the reflection of her sunglasses, his shadow looming over my family's sacred space. The beach condo wasn't just a property. It was the heart of so many cherished memories. We built sandcastles with the kids there, celebrated anniversaries, and watched countless sunsets. The thought of someone else invading that space felt like an open wound. I couldn't let it go. The next weekend, while Michelle was at work, I drove to the condo. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I needed answers. As I pulled into the lot, my heart raced. The place looked the same as always, calm, serene, deceptively untouched. But as I stepped inside, it felt different, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets. I started in the master bedroom, searching through drawers and closets. Everything seemed in place until I noticed something odd. On the bedside table was a bracelet I didn't recognize, a white band with a single black bead. Michelle didn't wear jewelry like that. And then it hit me. Weeks ago, she'd started wearing a similar bracelet, claiming it was a gift from her best friend. Was this Eric's? A matching bracelet, perhaps? I kept digging, opening every cabinet, flipping through every drawer. That's when I found it, a receipt crumpled up in the trash can. It was for a fancy dinner at a nearby oceanfront restaurant. The date on it lined up perfectly with the weekend Michelle had told me she was working late. The receipt had 2 entrees and a bottle of wine listed. She wasn't alone, but the real punch in the gut came when I pulled the sheets back on the bed. Beneath them, tucked into the corner of the mattress, was a man's hat. It was emblazoned with the logo of a local landscaping company. I didn't even need to guess. It was his. My mind raced with fury and despair. They hadn't just met at the condo. They'd stayed there together, slept in the same bed where I'd lain so many nights before. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. I took pictures of everything. The bracelet, the receipt, the hat. I needed evidence. I wasn't even sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I couldn't confront Michelle without proof. As I locked up the condo and drove home, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about Michelle anymore. It was about protecting myself, my kids, and my future. I wasn't going to sit back and let her lies destroy everything I'd worked for. If she wanted to tear this family apart, I'd make damn sure she'd have to face the consequences. The truth was ugly, and I wasn't ready for it. But now, I was determined to uncover every last piece. Part 5. The Confrontation. I spent the next few days in a haze, replaying what I'd found at the beach condo. The bracelet, the receipt, the hat. They felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve, but couldn't ignore. I wanted to believe Michelle's half-hearted denials, but the evidence was glaring. There was no way this was just talking. The breaking point came one evening when I walked into the kitchen and found her laughing on the phone. Her carefree demeanor was a knife in my chest. I knew who she was talking to. She hung up quickly when she saw me, her smile fading. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice tight. "Just Sarah," she said too quickly. "She's going through a rough patch." "Sarah," I repeated, leaning against the counter. Funny, I didn't know Sarah owned a landscaping company. Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I pulled my phone out and showed her the pictures I'd taken at the condo. The bracelet, the receipt, the hat. I watched her carefully, hoping for some flicker of guilt or regret. Instead, she crossed her arms and scowled. "So, you went snooping?" she snapped. "Snooping?" I shot back. "Is that what we're calling finding your affair partner's hat in our bed?" Her eyes darted to the pictures, then back to me. "It's not what you think," she said, but her voice was weaker this time. "We went there to talk. That's all. Talk." I laughed bitterly. "Michelle, there's wine on the receipt and his hat on the bed. Do you think I'm an idiot?" For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then she deflated, sinking into a chair at the table. "Fine," she said quietly. "We've been seeing each other. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And yes, it's gone beyond talking." Her admission hit me like a freight train. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing her say it aloud was a different kind of pain. "How long?" I asked, my voice shaking. "How long have you been lying to me?" She hesitated. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of secrets and betrayal. Half a year of her smiling at me, sleeping next to me, while she carried on with him. "And the kids?" I demanded. "Did you even think about them? About what this would do to them?" Tears streamed down her face now. "Of course I did," she cried. "But I was unhappy, okay? I didn't know how to fix it. So, you burn it all down instead," I said coldly. I walked out of the kitchen before I said something I couldn't take back. My head was spinning, my chest tight with anger and grief. I didn't know what my next move would be, but I knew one thing. This marriage wasn't salvageable. That night, I started making calls. Lawyers, therapists, anyone who could help me navigate the chaos that was now my life. Michelle had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. Part 6. The Unexpected Ally. The day after our confrontation, I avoided Michelle entirely. I didn't have the energy to deal with her, and I needed space to think. But avoiding her didn't mean avoiding the fallout. That afternoon, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Hello? Is this?" A man's voice hesitated on the other end. "Look, I'm not sure how to start this. My name's Brian. I think we need to talk." "Brian?" I repeated, confused. "Who are you?" He sighed. "I'm Eric's brother." The name alone made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What do you want?" "Listen, I don't like what my brother's been doing," he said. "I've been sitting on this for months. But when I saw his truck at your beach condo last weekend, I couldn't stay quiet anymore." My pulse quickened. "You saw them at the condo?" "Yeah," Brian said, his voice heavy with guilt. "He bragged about it afterward. Said he spent the night with your wife." Hearing it confirmed by someone else was like ripping the wound open all over again. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Because it's wrong," he said simply. "Eric's been tearing apart families for years. He does this. Gets involved with married women, strings them along, and then moves on when he's bored. I don't want to see you or your kids suffer because of him." I was stunned. I didn't expect Eric's own brother to be the one offering me an olive branch. "What are you suggesting I do?" I asked. "Whatever you need to protect yourself," Brian said firmly. But if you're looking for proof, I've got it. Proof. That word made my heart race. What kind of proof? Messages, he said. He's careless. Leaves his phone unlocked all the time. I've seen the texts he sent to your wife, the pictures she sent him. I can send you screenshots if you want. My stomach churned at the thought, but I knew I needed to see them. Send them, I said. Within minutes, my phone buzzed again. And there it was, laid bare in front of me. Intimate texts between Michelle and Eric, photos of them together, and, worst of all, a picture of Eric in my beach condo, grinning like he'd won the lottery. I felt sick, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, clarity. There was no room for doubt anymore. Michelle wasn't just having a momentary lapse of judgment. She was fully invested in this betrayal. Thank you, I told Brian, my voice strained. I don't know what I'll do yet, but thank you for telling me. I'm sorry it came to this, he said. You seem like a good guy. You don't deserve this. As I hung up, I stared at the messages, my hands trembling. The anger was there, boiling just beneath the surface. But so was a strange sense of resolve. I had the proof I needed. Now it was time to act. Part 7. The final straw. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the screenshots from Brian's text pulled up on my laptop. I'd spent the whole day wrestling with myself, debating whether to confront Michelle again or just let the lawyer handle it. But as I stared at those pictures, Eric's smug face in my condo, the messages where they joked about how clueless I was, I felt my restraint crumble. When Michelle walked through the door, I didn't wait. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold. She hesitated, her keys still in her hand. What's this about now? She asked, clearly bracing for another fight. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the laptop around to face her, letting the evidence speak for itself. Her eyes widened as she scanned the screen, her face draining of color. Where did you get this? She stammered. It doesn't matter, I said sharply. What matters is that I know everything now. You lied to my face, Michelle, over and over again, and you've been treating me like I'm the one who's failing this marriage. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. I didn't want you to find out like this. Find out what? I demanded. That you've been sneaking off with him for months? That you brought him into our home, into our bed? Do you even care about what this has done to me? To the kids? I do care, she cried, tears streaming down her face. I never meant for it to go this far. I was unhappy, and he made me feel alive again. Alive, I said bitterly. You call this living? Sneaking around, lying, tearing apart your family? That's not living, Michelle. That's selfishness. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, the gaslighting, the sheer audacity of it all, and the sympathy evaporated. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice firm. You've made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. Wait, no, please. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut him off. I'll do whatever it takes. It's too late, I said, standing up. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed our kids, our life, everything we built together. I can't trust you anymore. She tried to argue, but I was done listening. I walked out of the room, leaving her to her tears. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the ending I wanted, but it was the one I needed. That night, I called my lawyer to finalize the divorce proceedings. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to fight for my kids, my home, and my sanity. Michelle had made her bed, and now she'd have to lie in it alone. Part 8. A New Beginning. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal meetings, custody discussions, and tense, silent encounters with Michelle. We stayed in the same house temporarily for the sake of the kids, but the divide between us was undeniable. Every interaction felt like walking through a minefield, and I knew it was only a matter of time before one of us snapped again. Michelle tried to make amends, at least in her own way. She insisted she'd cut off contact with Eric and even offered to go to therapy on her own. But the damage was done. The trust, the foundation of everything we'd built, was shattered. Her words felt like empty gestures, too little, too late. The kids noticed the changes, of course. My daughter, always perceptive, asked why mommy and daddy weren't eating dinner together anymore. It broke my heart to explain it in the gentlest way possible, assuring her that no matter what, we both loved her and her brother more than anything. I hated seeing the confusion in their eyes, knowing they were caught in the crossfire of something they couldn't understand. One day, as I was packing up some of my belongings, I found a photo album tucked away in the back of a closet. It was filled with snapshots of our life together, our wedding day, the birth of our children, vacations, holidays. Flipping through those pages, I felt a pang of sadness for what we'd lost. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. Those moments were real, and they mattered. But they were in the past. It was time to move forward. The final court date came quicker than I expected. Sitting across from Michelle in the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of emotions, grief, anger, relief. When the judge finalized our divorce, I didn't feel victorious or defeated. I just felt free. In the months that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I focused on my kids, making sure they felt loved and secure despite the changes around them. I started running again, something I'd given up years ago when life got too busy. I even reconnected with old friends, people I'd unintentionally drifted away from during the chaos of my marriage. Michelle moved out of the house and into an apartment nearby. We kept things civil for the sake of co-parenting, but our conversations were strictly logistical. She tried a few times to talk about us, but I shut it down every time. There was no us anymore. There never would be. One evening, after tucking the kids into bed, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey, watching the sun dip below the horizon. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The betrayal still stung, and there were nights when the loneliness crept in. But I knew I'd made the right choice. I deserved better. My kids deserved better. As the stars began to dot the sky, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was just a new beginning. Life would go on, and so would I, stronger, wiser, and, most importantly, free.